Welcome to the Tuesday, November 8th edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by No House Advantage. Obviously, hey, it's different setup, right? I'm in a different place, Jake's in a different place, but it's the same two guys getting you set for the Week 10 waiver wire. 4 teams on bye, obviously plenty to discuss. So we'll hit the break here, or I guess the intro, I should say, and then we'll get right back to discussing everything. Again, welcome to the Tuesday, November 8th edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by No House Advantage. I'm Joe Bartel. Follow me at JB Fantasy Sports. Follow Jake at Roto Jake. Obviously, Week 10 waiver wire priority. We already get people in the comments saying I got Saquon Barkley on waivers, so we can already say we're already set for that guy. I don't have to help him out whatsoever. But for the rest of you who aren't spoiled with the Saquon Barkley on waivers, plenty to discuss today. The Monday night recap of the Ravens Saints too.
Yeah, it's funny with Saquon Barkley because, the Giants are on bye last week. And I think the theme of a lot of our pickups this week are going to be players that saw their ownership level decrease because of so many teams on bye last week. So many teams and managers were in a bye week crunch that they probably had to make some undesirable drops. And there are going to be some names. There are some names that are surprisingly under our 50% threshold that you definitely want to check out first. And, of course, we'll have your regular deep dives for you as well.
Yeah, it's been the key the last 2 weeks when we had the 6 teams on bye last week, the 14, I guess there's only 2 this week, but some critical ones too, and difficult roster decisions. We'll get to all that and more. First, a word from our sponsors, No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play them in pick 'em contests versus other people for a shot at winning cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of $1,000s every week. You can test your skills versus the house and 20x your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet up to 5 player props, over-unders, or individual player matchups across every major sport league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHWIRE. That's NHWIR at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the App Store to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined. It's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. Before we really get into the Week 10 waiver wire pickups, let's talk first about the Monday night match between the Ravens and Saints. Now, I'll be honest, Jake, as you can tell, I'm here. I'm not feeling very well. You can guess with what I am dealing with. I fell asleep probably through the first quarter of that contest. I woke up to see Lamar Jackson barely won a few of my matchups I needed him to. Andy Dalton also struggled up until the last junk time touchdown. Through that interception that really kind of cost them any chance of coming back in this contest. What were your overall thoughts about this for the Ravens, who were without Rashad Bateman for the year, Mark Andrews for this week, possibly? Same with Gus Edwards, too, because they're on bye, so it's going to matter now for 2 weeks for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I watched about 75% of this game, which I think is pretty good, given there were 200 college basketball games for opening night yesterday, and I had to direct some traffic there. But I watched as much of this game as I could. It was kind of like Badgers on one screen, and then I would catch this game on my phone. But honestly, it was another lackluster, lopsided primetime matchup. I mean, the score looks a little better by the Saints scoring a very, very fluky touchdown late. Otherwise, this would have been a 27-6 game. The Saints offense stagnated. They could not execute in the red zone. They could not protect Andy Dalton, which made me think, I was wondering, Jameis isn't going to be any worse than this. You might as well throw Jameis. Maybe he's a little bit mobile. But I will say that if Jameis took some of the hits Dalton took last night with his fractured vertebrae already, he probably would have a broken back. So I guess I can see why they're doing that to protect Jameis, I guess. On the Ravens side, no Gus Edwards. No Mark Andrews, really no problem here. Kenyon Drake had 109 total yards and 2 touchdowns. He filled in very well. Isaiah Likely, for such a hot top tight end pickup, he was a guy that barely made it worth it. He had a 24-yard touchdown on the opening drive and then didn't catch any of his other 4 targets, which interestingly enough, he led the team with 5 targets. So no real Duvernay show, no real Demarcus Robinson show over there. 10 different pass catchers caught a pass from Baltimore. Not a single one had more than 5 targets or more than 24 yards. So that should kind of tell you what kind of a game this was. This was Baltimore all the way. And disappointing fantasy largely for the Saints. Kamara was pretty disappointing. Olave was serviceable. He continues to be the main guy over there. Of course, Jarvis Landry was inactive. We thought maybe he'd be back this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all that there, especially the pass catchers. You thought it'd be interesting. Deshaun Jackson makes his return to the NFL, plays obviously because they have Bateman out. Nobody really ended up standing out, even after Isaiah Likely. I thought after that first catch, it was like, all right, Isaiah Likely here to go. Obviously, he was one of the top waiver wire pickup and recommendations last week.
Monster
Didn't really
game
turn
coming,
things
right?
around.
Not so fast.
Not exactly. Anything else you want to discuss about that Monday night game, or we can just move on?
I think we can just move on here. I kind of hit the quick hitters there. I guess I should shout out Justin Houston. We very rarely touch on IDPs. He had 2.5 sacks and a pick. I mean, the old timeless veteran was everywhere, and is someone Andy Dalton probably had nightmares about last night.
I thought you were going to say it's a stake league play for you, Mr. Third place or whatever it is right now with your crazy point total.
Yeah, we're crushing that. But unfortunately, all my IDPs are on bye or hurt this week, so it was a unique week. But I think I still got the W. Pretty sure I still got the W.
Yeah, I would
Justin
assume.
Tucker put me over the edge, if anything. Best $2 spend ever.
Given your point total, I would imagine so too. We got plenty of questions coming in. A lot of them more focused on other things other than waiver wire right now. So we'll make sure we address them towards the end of the show, talking about a couple of plans for week 14, 15, and 16, Jake, if you're ready to answer those types of things. Again, we'll get to all those at the end of the show. Week 10 buys this week. So Ravens, Bengals, Jets, Patriots, a dual AFC North, AFC East ones. Obviously not as prominent as we had a couple weeks ago with the Rams and Eagles and Vikings, but still some quarterbacks possibly that you're missing out on, certainly some running backs and receivers too. We had talked about Justin Fields last week as a top waiver wire pickup. Boy, did he ever do well. I actually have a best ball league in the NFFC where Fields scored 55 points. He ended up putting Patrick Mahomes' 40 points on my bench, which I thought that was kind of fantastic to think about a little bit. Obviously, Fields is widely available now. Somebody's asking, they have Fields as the quarterback one. They're planning for week 14, 15, and 16 quarterbacks. Do you feel like this is an aberration? Like Fields is going to end up not being literally this dominant, or have the Bears actually unlocked something with Fields? Like, is he someone that you want to trade for at this point?
I don't expect, too many more 40-point games, but I think he's safe to put in the top 15 quarterbacks, maybe even top 10 rest of season here. I don't know. He's in a division where there are some soft defenses here. He has a very nice schedule coming up. I mean, he gets Detroit next week, and then Atlanta the week after. So that's 3 weeks in a row. I mean, that's part of the reason we advocated for him last week. He had 3 weeks in a row of bottom 5 defenses against opposing quarterbacks, and he really showed it, against the Dolphins here. I saw a stat since week 5 or week 6. He's QB1 in fantasy, which is a little bit surprising here. I would feel, unfortunately, I got too impatient with Justin Fields in my personal rosters. He was a drop after week 3 or 4 with how that Bears offense looked, and now I have to pay a heavy price if I want to get him back. So it's a tough call, but I very much think it's sustainable, and he could be your QB1 rest of season. I have absolutely no problem with that. I mean, would you rather have Fields or Rodgers the rest of the year, for example?
Obviously, easily. Rodgers is like. Yeah, I mean, Rodgers is droppable.
So would you rather have Fields or Russell Wilson? Obviously, the answer is Fields. Would you rather have Fields or Tom Brady? I mean, probably Fields over Brady, too, if he gets a little bit closer there. But those 3 guys we mentioned were pretty much 100% drafted, and, Fields was an afterthought. Now he's your QB1 the rest of the year.
Yeah, you're right. Another one was Derek Carr for me. I would have Fields over Derek Carr every single time. And that's for the top 12 to enter this season. Now, Rodgers is like quarterback 25 at he's Ryan Tannehill level. I'm not touching him ever again the rest of the season. I hope the Packers don't either. I hope he gets benched. Okay, so you mentioned Fields.
Top, but
no. I mean, from a Packers fan perspective, we are all in on CJ Stroud. Let's go in. Let's do this. You guys suck so much at this point. This different podcast.
Yeah. I know. I was so excited to go to the Dallas game this week, and that came
we're selling our tickets
real fast for me. I'm not selling these tickets, but the week 6, 17, and 18 Vikings and Lions tickets are definitely going to be up for grabs.
Yeah, I don't know who's paying for them. That's the problem. Okay, so different podcast, different time.
Lambeau for the first time, but yeah. Anyway, sidetrack. More quarterbacks, Joe.
You had mentioned Justin Fields facing the Lions, and the Lions defense looked pretty good against the Packers. Well, it's because the Packers suck. Flip side, you got the Lions offense going against the Bears defense. Tua and the Dolphins scored 35 of them, and probably should have scored more, but Tua short arm to throw to Jalen Waddle to end that game. That kind of kept it close. I'm not convinced Jared Goff is going to be that good fantasy-wise, but you're looking at a group of streamers where the bye week's kind of decimated a little bit now that you're using Mac Jones, but Zach Wilson, perfectly good possible streaming candidate. Same would go for, you would think Joe Burrow is on the same fringe. He's probably a start most weeks, but you got Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, probably the top one, although last time he was the top waiver wire pickup, stunk for me when he was filling in for Josh Allen. Jimmy Garoppolo, Marcus Mariota, Thursday night game against the Panthers, yippee-ki-yay. which one of these streamer options are you kind of considering this week if you're replacing Lamar or Joe Burrow?
Yeah, I know Daniel Jones left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths when he was playing against the Seahawks and what was a favorable matchup and barely had double-digit points, following up his near 30-point fantasy effort against the Jaguars the week before. But he's a player that is only 40% rostered. A ton of teams, like I said, theme of the show, dropped him on the bye week this week. And Houston has been oddly, this is one of the weird stats here. They're number 4 against opposing quarterbacks, but I think that's just because they're getting blown out and teams run the ball. So, I don't know, the Giants coming off a bye could very easily, put up some points there. And then Daniel Jones has Detroit right after that. So it's a nice upcoming schedule. There's availability. I think he is the first option that you're looking at streaming wise. Otherwise, you can go back to Marcus Mariota, 33% Thursday night game. I don't love starting bad quarterbacks on Thursday night because the play isn't great to begin with. But after watching what the Panthers, allowed last week, I could very much see that. I mean, I'm not interested in Andy Dalton. Very limited interest in Taylor Heineke at Philly. And then you're down to the Kenny Pickett, Davis Mills, Jacoby Brissett tier. So really, it's Daniel Jones, maybe Mariota. You could make a case for Jimmy G too, 39% rostered against the Chargers. That defense hasn't been the greatest, and we mentioned some of their injuries last week with their top corner signee being out for the season here. So that's an option too if you're really struggling here. But definitely looking for Danny Dimes first.
Yeah, I think he's first and foremost, and other than Mariota, who I'm actually okay with from the rushing perspective. If we're fine with Justin Fields as a quarterback one, and we should be, I feel like that's the same thing with Marcus Mariota, only the light version. You can get 15 points, 16 points if you're trying to fill in for Lamar Jackson. Or Joe Burrow in that instance. I guess I missed this. Josh Allen reported this after an injury Sunday. Because I missed this, I don't want to talk out on my butt. You want to elaborate on this a bit further and what that means for Case
so
Keenum?
it's an elbow or a UCL injury. I'm going to look it up exactly. And apparently his Week 10 status is TBD. It's an elbow injury to his ulnar collateral ligament. If you're a baseball fan, you're familiar with that, is what sometimes requires Tommy John surgery here. And apparently there could be related nerve damage here. So they're still in the evaluation stage. Apparently they're going to know more in 24 hours. I wouldn't expect Allen to practice much this week. He'll definitely take an injury tag heading into the week. My 2-quarterback league with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts is looking, I don't know, I'm starting to get worried about that. Unfortunately, Fields won't be out there for me, but that is probably going to be an issue for me. We just don't know yet. So I'm putting it out here because it's Tuesday. And, for 2-quarterback leagues, if you have to make a bid tonight, Case Keenum could be someone that a lot of people will have to target. And I wonder my question is, how does Case Keenum compare to like the bottom barrel tier of guys in 2-quarterback leagues here? I'm talking the Kenny Pickett, Davis Mills, Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton, or whoever the Saints threw out there. I have to imagine Case Keenum is a little bit higher than that group of players just because of the team that Buffalo has built around him. They don't necessarily need to ask him to do a whole lot, but he can be plenty successful on short passes and short to medium length with the type of receiving core they have. And I'm looking at their schedule here. Vikings, Browns, Lions, Patriots. Only one of those teams is in the top half in terms of rankings for fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So if Allen does miss any time, Tuesday night's okay to put a preemptive bid on Case Keenum, but just know very well that Allen could turn out to be fine. We don't know yet.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer regarding where he ranks among the lower tiers of quarterbacks. I don't think he's very good, but the issue is we don't have the answers to the test. So we don't know how the Bills can't operate offensively with Case Keenum the way they would with Josh Allen. Like you can't get 60-yard touchdown runs with Case Keenum. You can't get 5-yard runs with Case Keenum. It doesn't work that way offensively. So do you use Singletary more? Does this become the Nyheim Hines and Zach Moss get more involved?
Yeah.
My answer would be no. I wouldn't think they would. So shorter pass. It's too difficult for me to say where Keenum ranks and how they want to use him.
I put him about on the Heineke tier, if that makes any sense here. I put him probably above Kenny Pickett because that organization is in shambles. Put him above Davis Mills. Put him above Jacoby Brissett because Brissett will probably, Deshaun Watson will be back here week 13, which maybe we want to touch on. But yeah, good enough to be a QB2 in a 12-team 2-quarterback league. But, you're not crazy optimistic, 15, 20 points a week at best.
Yeah. Possibly a better answer to this question is, what do you do with Baker Mayfield, who took over for PJ Walker towards the end of that game for the Panthers? Actually looked like he was a competent quarterback for the first time in about 16 games. Like we all know that Baker Mayfield's actually a better quarterback than PJ Walker, but the baloney that had been going on in Carolina, I think it affected a lot of different things. They have pass catchers, right? DJ Moore. Finally, our boy Terrace Marshall's getting consistently good workload. Shocking what happens when you play him in the right position.
Put him down in the receiver section again. I forgot to, but yes, get Terrace.
Yeah, well, everyone knows that we've been recommending him so much. We are the fan, the first and only Terrace Marshall fan show here on all the podcast platforms.
Exactly.
So I think Baker Mayfield actually would be far more interesting to me than Case Keenum, and they have a good match against the Falcons this week.
Unless I missed something here, I don't know for sure that it's Mayfield's job here. He basically came in. I never thought I'd say this, Joe, but you're giving Baker Mayfield too much credit. He came in after halftime when they were down 42-0, saw nothing but soft coverage against the Bengals defense. That all they really wanted to do is just not give up a big play and be conservative and protect the lead. And then he looks good. So like as of yesterday, we have, the latest on RotoWire. Obviously, this is subject to change. We'll see what the team does. But it looks like PJ Walker is going to start Thursday night against the Falcons. So very little Baker Mayfield interest. But, in the deepest of two quarterback leagues, if he's still hanging out there, maybe there's a roster spot for him.
You touched on Deshaun Watson. I think we'll get to that. I guess I'll call it a conundrum towards the end of the show because we had a user question regarding that. Is there any other quarterback conversation that you want to have before we move over to the running backs?
Yeah, I mean, the guy that was asking about looking ahead to the playoffs and wanting a QB2, Deshaun Watson's only 28% rostered, so I'd actually be looking to add him. I mean, Jacoby Brissett has filled in admirably, I would say, but he definitely hasn't been, outstanding enough that he's going to suddenly unseat this quarterback that they brought in with a giant contract here that's, inexplicably. But Deshaun Watson's going to get the reins there, and that offense is better than I expected, and they could do some damage with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I guess since you brought it up, I'll say I'm not convinced Watson's going to be all that effective, to be honest. We've seen in the NBA often when you bring in these star players, but really just a new player into the system, there's no guarantees they're effective right away. And Brissett's gotten chemistry with Cooper and things like that. So just to say, Watson's a better quarterback than Brissett, he is, doesn't mean that's going to translate that way immediately. Yeah. That's my bigger concern with
maybe there's some growing pains. And again, the guy who was in question was looking for a QB2. So, there's little cost if he comes out there and stinks him up, you can move on to one of these other guys. I mean, I would argue that this could be Deshaun Watson's best running game that he's ever had in his NFL career. And I mean, he has the true number one in Amari Cooper. And, spoiler alert for later in the show, I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones is starting to get more involved. And I think there's some skill there. So and Njoku's coming back too, apparently. He claims he's going to try to play week 10, which is an interesting thing. Maybe that knocks the value off Peoples-Jones a little bit, but, we'll see how that all plays out.
I guess real quick, because it fit into what we were discussing with Josh Allen a little bit, somebody had asked if they have Josh Allen in a 10-team league, would they make acquiring Tua off of waivers a priority? I think the answer is unequivocally yes. Like Tua, we're talking about like low-end quarterback ones. Tua needs to easily be in that top-tier category.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, what the rest of your team looks like. And in 10-teamers, there are going to be studs out on the waiver wire. But I think, if you're in the top half and need to protect yourself, make sure you get a playoff spot. Yeah, I would make Tua a priority. Now, the other side of that is, you'd have to look at the rest of the list here, right? Because it's a 10-team league. Chances are there are going to be good quarterbacks out there too. So if you don't get Tua, it might not be the end of the world. But getting Tua is good because, one, it stops somebody else from getting a potential QB1 that they'll start every week. And two, it just gives you some Josh Allen insurance. So I could see using a top waiver on that.
Okay, I completely agree with you on that. All right, well, let's transition over to the running backs. Before we do so, let's get a word from our sponsors from Blue Wire. Obviously, the video audience, stick right around. Audio audience, we'll be right back in a little bit here. Okay, so last week we had mentioned from a running back perspective, Kyron Williams still has not been activated yet, which has been frustrating. Kenyon Drake, Mr. 2-touchdown Monday Night Performance. Kenyon Drake looking pretty good. Latavius Murray, the Cook and Dontrell Hilliard, kind of the recap of the trade deadline and what that occurred. Obviously, we were freaking out about the Nyheim Hines and Zach Moss deal when it occurred because that was when we were live, but it hasn't really had any ramifications. Zach Moss wasn't activated for the game, even though Jonathan Taylor was out. So you have one guy that was acquired via trade, Jeff Wilson, At about 50% rostered. And I had mentioned when they acquired Jeff Wilson, hey, more of a backup here in the situation. What are we going to be able to get out of him? Okay, he looked okay in his debut.
Yeah, it was interesting. First off, he had more snaps than Raheem Mostert in his debut and one more target and an equal amount of carries. So Miami, regardless, is committed to this two-back system. And, if you look at Jerry's backfield breakdown this week, he mentions that Mostert got the start, played 86% of the snaps in the first quarter, even got a short rushing touchdown. And then I don't know what happens. Wilson didn't take a single snap in the first quarter, then 47% in the second, 65% in the third, and 57% in the fourth. So that was just there's no Mostert injury that was reported. If I looked at this blindly, I would say, oh, Mostert must have gotten hurt. No, that wasn't the case. Jeff Wilson came in with a pretty with a pretty significant workload. So if someone did drop him out of fear that he was going to be an afterthought in this offense, similar to guys like Zach Moss or Nyheim Hines in their debuts, that was wrong. And I would take a look at Jeff Wilson first.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you again. Kind of the theme of what we were discussing is looking at who was cut over the last 2 weeks, more or less, and see what you can do to capitalize on that. All right. So let's turn to the Packers. Dismally bad and also dismally hurt. At one point, they had 8 starters out during that loss against the Lions. You have Aaron Jones get banged up with a knee injury. I'm not positive what that ended up being.
An ankle injury. I think
ankle injury. Okay.
Dude, I didn't think about that, but that field turf took a toll.
Yep, Rashawn Gary done for the season. Romeo Doubs probably done for quite a while too.
Yeah,
Christian Watson his first play injury as well. Yeah. I mean, the Packers suck, and the injuries certainly did not help things either. However, you had a player return from injury, Kylan Hill. Typically, their kickoff returning had the kind of nasty injury last year where the guy just splatted his knee and he was done for the season. If you remember, Kylan Hill actually was a really top, high-rated college prospect. Then had some shenanigans with the coach that really kind of pushed his value back down to the 7th round. Well, if Aaron Jones is out and A.J. Dillon has been ineffective, maybe you have Kylan Hill in deeper leagues where he could be something that you could consider.
Yeah, so the thing is Aaron Jones, we've had mixed reports, right? He wanted to go back into the game, and then he said after the game he didn't want to. It's good that he didn't go back in because of how sore the ankle is. Now he went and had his x-rays come back negative, and suddenly he should be able to play this week. So, like Alan and Jeff note in their sneaky ads video that they do every week, they're like, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But in the event that Aaron Jones doesn't play, I mean, this is how thin the running back waiver wire is this week. This illustrates it perfectly. But in the event that Aaron Jones doesn't play, I think Hill can kind of just jump into his role to some degree. I mean, A.J. Dillon, of course, will get an uptick in snap count, but I don't think A.J. Dillon's going to get 25 carries in any game whatsoever. I think they kind of keep that similar balance, 1-2 punch, use a 2-back system with the edge to Dillon, but enough to Hill. Hill, even after the injury, in short spurts looks pretty explosive. He was always a plus athlete, right? From his college days. You said, he was, the rating went down due to non-football related things. And, we've never really seen in our recent memory, a Packer team that is, tumbling downhill like this, right? So how is Rodgers' attitude towards everyone, going to be affected affecting things in the locker room? For me, Kylan Hill, he has something to prove no matter what, and he will be the least effective out of anybody by that. Because this is pretty much pushing the reset button on his first real NFL shot. He has a lot to prove, and he doesn't care, what the record is or what the situation is, because he's he's not necessarily used to winning 10, 12 games every single year or more than that. So maybe I'm twisting that narrative spin a little bit too much, but he's a player that, if guys get rested at all down the stretch, or if anything happens, I think he could go out there and put up some numbers as part of a 2-back scheme here. So again, only for the deepest of leagues. With the Jones news that apparently he's going to play, you probably don't have to pay a high price for him. But, your 14, 16 team leagues, I'll put $1 or $2 down and just see what happens with them.
I was thinking I got a lot of empty roster spots on my NFFC team, which is already dead in the water. We're playing things out. That's the type of deeper league, 20 roster spots, 12 teams. I could see Kylan Hill. I guess a spoiler, I think there's actually a different Packers player that I think has a lot more value that we'll discuss when we get to the wide receiver section, given all the injuries that the Packers did end up dealing with. Kyron Williams, I think, continues to be my top waiver wire recommendation at running back right now. Again, still on injured reserve. you look at the production that they've gotten out of Ronnie Rivers, and then Darrell Henderson was more of the top back end for the Buccaneers this week.
Well, Ronnie
Cam Akers
Rivers
came back and still didn't do much, you know?
Rivers moves to the cut list because Rivers didn't play a single offensive snap. He was exclusively special teams this past week. So he goes from getting noteworthy carries last week to, stashed away. They don't have a guy that they trust or even like, really. So, why not take a shot on Kyren Williams as your stash candidate?
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one as well. I guess other candidates here. So we had mentioned with Jeff Wilson as far as a cut. Like other people might have cut him and maybe consider him. The same goes for Chase Edmonds. Now, you and I differ, and we discussed this last week as well, too. I think Chase Edmonds has more value than you might be considering. Have you changed your tune at all over the week, or are you still saying, it's going to be a bad committee, what I really care about it?
Yeah, I didn't really want to, we didn't necessarily need to do this at length, but I did see that he dropped below 50%. And, because, again, the Broncos were on a bye, so we're looking at those players. And, I don't know. My interest is mild. It depends who I'm cutting for him. I'm not going to cut a prospect stash like Kyren Williams or Terrace Marshall for him. But if there is a dead weight, if I had to pick up a second defense or second IDP or something last week, I'd consider it and see what happens. Because I guess there is some ceiling, there is some upside, but I don't think Melvin Gordon and Latavius Murray are both going to completely go away. And with double-digit carries being the ceiling, I don't know that. That Chase Edmonds is necessarily the answer for anyone's fantasy teams.
That's fair enough. I guess I'm rolling the dice at least one more week on if Edmonds is worth a roster spot. We'll have to see. They had the bye week to incorporate him, so there should be no excuses. If Chase Edmonds is getting 4 snaps and Mike Boone's getting 12, then I know what's
and you've been a bigger
critic
critic as anyone about Hackett and that offensive scheme or lack thereof. So I don't know how you think a guy getting 1/3 of the carries there is going to necessarily do it.
I just think he's getting 2/3 of the carries. That's why.
Wrong.
Okay, so Jerick McKinnon also kind of stinks, but still getting playing time. Our disciple that we're following, Mario Puig, right, hates Jerick McKinnon for rightful reasons. I'm not convinced Jerick McKinnon's worth it, but when he continues to get the playing time he does, there is that kind of to follow at least. What are your thoughts with Jerick?
Yeah, this is a guy that you can add as a desperation flex because – so the Sunday night game was unique in a sense that it was close between the Chiefs and the Titans here. The Titans oddly seem to have that blueprint that might be able to give the Chiefs trouble, but this is a pure snap share opportunity situation here. Isaiah Pacheco continues to start, and I'm continuing to stash him, but he's not getting very many carries here. He led the way with 5 carries compared to 4 for Edwards-Helaire and 3 for McKinnon. What was interesting is McKinnon had a 60.8% snap share, only 22.7% for Pacheco, and only 16.5% for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. When you're on I know this game flow is a bit fluky here, but your 8-team, 10-team leagues, Edwards-Helaire has got to be getting down close to the drop area in that, if you're only out there for less than 17% of snaps, that just can't continue here. And McKinnon also got 8 targets in the game. So if you need a desperation flex spot, and there's a game in which the Chiefs are the point spread is close, or the rare time that they find themselves as underdogs, which might not happen until they see the Bills in the playoffs, then maybe McKinnon can be a fill-in for a week for you because he's pretty widely available.
You had mentioned Rachaad White, at least in the rundown. It's interesting. I'm actually going to be cutting him in a league where I need to pick up a kicker in defense, thinking that I could kind of sneak him through waiver wire and grab him next week. He has been getting more snaps, but it is a situation where he's not going to have much value unless Fournette gets injured, and the Buccaneers have just been playing poorly. I know they got the win. It was kind of a last-second type of deal. So Rachaad White's out there. Also, Isaiah Spiller. I did write this note earlier today. I was like, oh, hey, rookie 5th-round pick actually doing what he's supposed to. He was a healthy DMP for like the first 6 weeks of the season. Now when Joshua Kelly was done on injured reserve for the next 4 weeks, you have Spiller kind of fitting into that backup committee role, and Sonny Michel getting bumped out of the equation.
Yeah, based on the snap share, it looks like Spiller has overtaken Sonny Michel. And Austin Eckler, the way that he's getting used, could – I don't want to put that on him because he's my stake league darling, but he's missed games here and there in the past. It's certainly possible. And they're in the whole team is in a situation, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, who knows when they're going to be back. So take a look at those Chargers guys. But yeah, Spiller and Rachaad White are guys that you pick up and definitely don't start right away, but you're hoping all of them are in the same group. Pacheco, Spiller, and Rachaad White. Rostering any of them is better than having dead weight on your bench. but you also can't expect to start them anytime soon and get a reliable source of production.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. Anybody that you want to mention from the cutting perspective? I know you always get some joy in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy this week. I guess unless we boldly want to put Edwards-Helaire on that list, but J.D. McKissic, obviously with that neck injury and seeing a specialist, and who knows when he's back, and Antonio Gibson being such a quality pass catcher. J.D. McKissic moves to the cut list. I mentioned Ronnie Rivers. He only played special teams. He's gone. Caleb Huntley had gotten like 16 carries in 2 of the past 3 weeks leading up to this week, but he's back on the cut list with Cordero Patterson back. And not only did James Conner play for the Cardinals after being very questionable and considered a game-time call for most of the week, he dominated the touches there, had his highest snap share since week 1. So, unless there's a case to be made for holding on to Eno Benjamin, given how injury-prone James Conner is, but Benjamin and any of the other Cardinals running backs could be cuttable this week if you needed to make a move.
Let's pivot over to the wide receivers. Before we do so, get a word from our sponsors, NFL All Day. NFL All Day is the officially licensed digital collectible of the NFL. It's a whole new way to express your fandom by owning the greatest moments from your favorite players and teams. Each moment on NFL All Day features a limited edition video highlight of one of the greatest plays from the NFL's past or present, from OBJ's iconic one-handed catch to Patrick Mahomes' 5 touchdowns on 5 straight possessions to Brian Urlacher's 85-yard pick six against the Packers. Of course, there's always truly a moment on NFL All Day every day for every NFL fan, and doesn't stop at being able to own a collection of your favorite moments, because NFL All Day rewards collectors for their fandom. You see, NFL All Day collectors have earned once-in-a-lifetime experience, like literally going on stage at the draft, when on draft picks, and meeting some of the biggest names from the 2022 NFL Draft at the NFLPA Rookie Premiere. What's the best way to get started? Head to NFLAllDay.com to sign up and redeem a free limited edition NFL collectible featuring Patrick Mahomes. Don't miss out on NFL All Day's next generation fan platform and start unlocking rewards and experiences today. Before we get to the wide receivers, Jake, real quick, and I'm of course gonna have to transition where I'm standing here. We're gonna get the power spot over here as I get my computer charger set. We had a question here. I've been discussing with Jacob Glazer here on the comment section. I guess I want you to weigh in as well too, Jake. He's asking, what value do you have for DJ Chark rest of the season? Of course, Chark's on injury reserve right now. He's trying to argue. We're having a conversation. He's trying to say, hey, wide receiver 2 for the Lions with TJ Hawkinson gone, does that have any value to you? What's your thoughts? Let's just assume you have to waste a roster spot. You don't get the free IR spot. You have to waste your roster spot. What do you think about DJ Chark?
I don't think that he's someone that you need to go out and use a roster spot on or a bid on or anything. I think if anything, the week that he's activated, you can probably pick him up for next to nothing or free of charge. I mean, he was inconsistent when he was out there. I mean, the first week, yeah, he had 4 for 52 yards and a touchdown. Then the second week, he was out there on the field for 40 snaps and didn't get a single reception on 4 targets. And I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the man. Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond are capable. They're using their young tight ends. And DeAndre Swift is back. I don't think he is so far from an automatic start when he's back that it's only worth it in the deepest of leagues for me. Am I misreading this? I didn't expect to get asked about DJ Chark today.
No. And that's what I've been discussing with him. He's trying to say, okay, well, you got the wide receiver 2 for the Lions. Jameson Williams probably not going to play this year. Right. We all knew that to begin the year. I'm not sure why that changed the equation. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Chark didn't get used all that much when he was out there. I think Josh Reynolds is okay, and he certainly has a chemistry with Jared Goff dating back to his days with the Rams, which I think matters in this. But it's also fair to say that when the Lions' offense was the best, and it was earlier this season, they were really good, mm-hmm. Chark was not being used all that frequently. That's my biggest concern. Now you have the Lions kind of struggling a little bit more. It's tough. I'm not kind of considering that. I will also take blame here, Jake, because I thought, and we had discussed this last week, given the news of Keenan Allen, and we both didn't project him to play, Mike Williams out as well too, that there was going to be really this committee receiving approach. No one was really stand out. Well, that was wrong, because Josh Palmer ended up being a pretty big factor in the Chargers' eventual win. DeAndre Carter doing more of the deep route specialist stuff we saw him do earlier in the year. And Michael Bandy, the undrafted rookie, was the guy that ended up being the bubble specialist that Carter was relegated to earlier this season. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw this at all. I was doing the research for the Chargers, so forgive me if I bore you, Jake. Last 2 weeks prior to this week, Michael Bandy had 8 targets and got negative yards on the 8 targets combined in 2 weeks. Through 3 weeks, he has 17 targets and just 25 total yards. That's incredibly inefficient. Incredibly inefficient.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to dive into this Chargers situation here. We probably should have stressed that a little more. I of course, I'm blindly here holding out hope that Keenan Allen is going to play here. But Josh Palmer, he's now up to 72% rostered, as you should be. After 10 targets last week, he proved that he can carry this offense a little bit, and it stops them from having to target Austin Eckler literally 20 times in a game. He still had 9 targets and a receiving touchdown. But Palmer's was the guy, and he's a solid pickup there. He's definitely one that is worth revisiting and probably typing in first just in case.
All right, your boy, Mecole Hardman, right? You were saying I'm going to get a stack of the Chiefs guys, and I'm going to get them all correct, and you almost did, right? I mean, MVS is about the only loss right there. Mecole Hardman's looking good. Patrick Mahomes is carrying your stake league team. Travis Kelce, if he went that direction too, has been fantastic. Juju Smith-Schuster has been everything he paid for. Congrats, Jake. You are the better stake league fantasy player, all that and more. But Mecole Hardman at 48% rostered. Are you investing a waiver wire, top waiver wire priority on Hardman, who has been a really good red zone threat for them most of this year, kind of like Tyreek Hill was when he was with the team last season?
Yeah, he's interesting. I don't know if he's a top waiver priority guy just because it's going to be frustratingly inconsistent, the way I see this. So, sure. And I mean, listen, the Juju Smith-Schuster stack is finally coming around because I was worried about that, to be honest, at the start of the year, but he seems to be fully acclimated, and it's Kelce and Juju. And I mean, in Stake League, I'll make a claim to drop MVS and pick up Hardman and put a couple bucks on it, but I'm not going to be bent out of shape if I don't get it. And I just want to look at his game log here to see if he's as inconsistent as I'm discussing, because I don't know if I trust him to start on my roster on a week to week. And there are a lot of other guys that are tough. Now, so 3 weeks in a row, 10.2, 24, and 13.4 fantasy points here. But, over the first 4 weeks of the season, it's like a combined 12 fantasy points. So are we buying that he has went ahead and turned the corner? Possibly. But he's definitely on the radar. He's someone that you can pick up in an otherwise thin week. But, I've got some other names on here that I'm either just as interested, if not more interested in here. So I can do these in, what are we looking at for time? I can do these in quick hit form, or we can elaborate on a couple guys.
You can dive in a bit more on Wan'Dale Robinson and Michael Gallup, because those are the two that are most intriguing to me. But quick hit the rest of them if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say Peoples Jones is one of the most intriguing, but there's been a little bit there. So Wan'Dale Robinson again, he had been seeing his role growing leading up to the bye. A lot of people who stashed him were forced to cut him because of the bye. He's got Houston and Detroit next up here, so he's someone that you look at only 25% rostered. Michael Gallup's another guy that surprisingly fell down to 39%. I checked; he's not even available in my 10-team league, though. People just had to cut him during the bye, and Dak Prescott is back, and I think he is. He's the wide receiver 2 there, and might function as the wide receiver 1 a couple weeks with Gallup. And then the guy I actually wanted to mention was Donovan Peoples-Jones. Obviously a stellar plus athlete at the position here. I remember him. We talk about back to his Michigan days. He has been productive. He had a season high 81 yards here. And, in PPR scoring, he's been in double digits 4 of the last 5 weeks leading up to the bye. And the 1 week he wasn't was 9 points. So he's getting used a lot. But the one word of caution there is that David. I'm sorry. What?
I was going to say lack of targets. I mean, I think no more than 5 each of the last 3 weeks. He's getting the big plays, but if the big plays aren't there, then you're taking a 0.
Since week 4, 9, 7, 5, 6, 4 for Peoples-Jones. So not a ton, I guess, in the past week, but reasonable enough volume here. And the one concern is David Njoku says he's going to play, and I think that'll suck some targets away from Peoples-Jones. So that's the worry there. But you can get him for pretty cheap. The Browns he's getting reasonable volume. He's a big play threat sometimes, and we're going to get I don't know if we agree on this, but what I assume will be an upgrade at quarterback here in week 13 in 3 weeks here. So, and you look at his schedule for the fantasy playoffs, that's on my mind now since that very first question. Week 15 is Baltimore, week 16 is New Orleans, week 17 is Washington, and week 18.
And that's with Watson as your quarterback.
Pittsburgh. Yeah. And that's so it's with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback,
Yeah.
with bottom 10 defenses against opposing wide receivers. New Orleans is barely outside the bottom 10, but close.
That's why you're the best, Jake. I love that.
So
I love that.
So, I mean, there's just a culmination of factors. So you do the pros and cons chart, right? The con is Njoku's coming back and he'll eat some target. The pros, significant quarterback upgrade and fantastic rest of season schedule. So you make your own call, I guess, with that, where you want to stack him up against Hardman, Gallup, and Wan'Dale Robinson there. And the last guy I just wanted to mention was Jarvis Landry. Of course, I expected that he would be back Monday night, but he wasn't. The Saints need a wide receiver too. Olave is clearly the guy. But someone like Landry in the slot could really help that offense. And, maybe you take a speculative ad on him if someone's finally cut bait, but people are starting to scoop him back up now too. So just the name I throw out there. 17%.
My biggest takeaway is from that. I think Amari Cooper is the most interesting trade candidate of out there. I mean, that is a fantastic playoff schedule. Jacob Glazer has been desperate for another wide receiver. Trade the house for Amari Cooper because you get Watson back. You have that schedule for the playoffs, and you're talking 12 points minimum floor. That's fantastic. I hadn't really realized that. And you don't think about the Browns as a team that you want the receivers for the playoffs, but that's a really good strength of schedule for the throwing.
The schedule is great. Now I didn't get a single Amari Cooper this year because I was very worried about Jacoby Brissett. So now might be the time to pony up and see what you can get. I'm glad we discovered that. We discovered that live here. I had put Peoples-Jones with the rationale of steady production and a better quarterback, but I didn't even look at the schedule until live, and that's fantastic. That puts another tally mark in his corner.
Yeah, I had asked you to talk about Wan'Dale Robinson only because Daniel Jones is our top streaming quarterback against the Texans this week. I do think Wan'Dale Robinson will do fine enough in a pretty plus match. Even though the Texans defense has been better than their offense, the Giants have played well, and you think with a good coaching staff, they'll come off a bye ready and prepared in what looks like a layup matchup overall. So
Wan'Dale, like I said, his role was growing leading up to the bye. Saw more than 2/3 of the snaps in each of the past 2 weeks. If you buy into that theory where they let the rookies loose after the bye week, then maybe we have something here. So go for it.
Can I give you an off the record pickup waiver wire?
Yeah, hit me. You're more than welcome.
All right, so deep waivers, obviously, but I play in the Dynasty Owner, obviously title sponsor for us back in the day. 30 roster spots. It's deep, 10 people. How about Samori Toure, right? I mean, we're talking about Kylan Hill as a possible pickup.
Oh, yeah.
You look at Romeo Doubs out. Alan Lazard's been banged up much of the season. Sammy Watkins doesn't even know how to run straight. There are better. I think he's actually a really, really good in deeper waiver wire, and I'm thinking specifically like the RotoWire Online Championships as well, too. Why not? I think Toure, especially if you think the season's going to go south like I do, feels like a perfect play.
I mean, if they get to a point where it's full-on tank mode and Jordan Love does end up playing, which will probably spell the end of Aaron Rodgers for certain if that hasn't been spelled out already, that's certainly a possibility. But remember that Christian Watson's only 3% rostered right now, and we'll see what's going on. I actually haven't had the heart to even look at the Romeo Doubs injury, and it looks like a high ankle sprain for Doubs. So, just to recap here, we have, Randall Cobb on IR, Doubs high ankle sprain. Alan Lazard has been banged up off and on all season here. Sammy Watkins is there, right? But
he's like by the default of the word there, but I don't think mentally he's anywhere close to actually being there. He's been awful. Yeah. He's been so bad.
I don't know. Every once in a while, I see him make a block downfield or a tackle on an interception that makes it look like he cares.
Tackling the interception. Yeah, that's what I want my wide receiver to be good at doing is tackling up an interception.
But Watkins was out there for 82.6% of the snaps, and Watson, on the other hand, saw less snaps than Toure. But Watson and Toure, put them both in the mix. I feel like Watson will get used more in the short term, or maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see.
No, hold on, Jake. I got the joke. I got the joke right here. Just wait. You said Christian Watson's rostered only 3% of the leagues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's about as many snaps as he's played all season. Boom, roasted. That's it. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, I'll eat that one. That is fair.
Thank you, Christian Watson.
He just ranks there because he's the higher draft pick, popular name, but also remember that he's a concussion away from a long absence.
Yeah. Any cuts at wide receiver? I guess I would just say my whole spirit when I'm watching the Packers is a cut, but that doesn't count from a fantasy perspective. Anybody that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I guess nobody I had down specifically. I suppose you could let Dobbs go with a long absence ahead. Um, I don't know. I'd have to think on that more. I'd take your ad drop question zone, see if that's worth it.
Oh, here, hold on. So this is a good one. Alan Lazard was dropped in somebody's 10-team league. Who should they drop for him? Josh Palmer, Adam Thielen, or my boy Deontay Johnson?
Ooh, I actually want to keep Deontay Johnson because obviously Claypool's gone. He'll be a target machine, and see, even with bad quarterback play and poor efficiency, the volume will be enough for him to stay just this productive. Let me look at the Vikings are interesting. Even though Palmer was good, my gut says Palmer's the cut there because they'll eventually get healthy, and Lazard should be productive here for the rest of the season. So, at first glance, I think, I think the cut is Palmer, but I don't know. Are you with me there?
Yeah, so like Palmer's gonna be good for the next 2 or 3 weeks. When Keenan Allen comes back, I do have some concerns about it. So you're destroying your opportunity for topside upside to start. But I also think Alan Lazard is going to be a tremendous fantasy asset for the rest of the season, provided he's healthy. Like every
Mhm.
game that Lazard is healthy, you're talking about at least 7 or 8 targets, provided Rodgers is playing, right? And that's the key part of this. And 60 or 70 yards. He's somehow their best slot threat and deep specialist, and he probably runs like a 4.9 40. It's really kind of incredible. But I think Lazard's pretty good and has a rapport with Rodgers and the only one. So yeah, I'll cut Palmer as well too for that.
Mhm. Yeah, he's the last guy standing that Rogers trusts.
Let's move over to tight ends. But before we do so, let's get a word from our sponsors. Monkey Knife Fight Football is officially back. A Monkey Knife Fight has been all season with all NFL action you're looking for. And if college football is more of your speed, they got plenty of that too. Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no sour caps, and no math. Thank goodness. It's just easy to play, easy to win. Daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first free game. You'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched up instantly to $100. So what are you waiting for? Monkey Knife Fight today. Tight ends. Hey, Greg Dulcich obviously has been a topic for us the past couple of weeks. Broncos were on bye. It's possible people had either cut him or just weren't able to pick him up. That would be one of my first targets. However, Mr. Two Touchdowns himself, Cole Kmet, also right up there at the tight end position.
Yeah. I still think Dulcich ranks number one for sure. He's only 37% rostered. And a lot of people also don't remember the London game that he had before the bye week, where there was one drive that their go-ahead drive late in the game. You can just call it the Greg Dulcich drive because Wilson targeted and hit him 3 times, and he fell he was down at the 1-yard line in his final catch on that drive before Latavius Murray punched it in. This could be a very different conversation, and that ownership number could be a very different number if he actually gets in the end zone that game, because then he's coming off a near 20-point fantasy day in this tight end wasteland. So I actually really like Dulcich. I think he's taken over the number one job. I mean, the fact that, as a rookie, the first game he comes off IR, he's used instantly and then continues to be used heavily. He gets open. He finds separation, and whether it's, Russell Wilson or Ripping, or obviously it's Russell Wilson, but they seem to like going to him. So Dulcich is number one. Fant is interesting. I think you do need to prepare yourself I'm sorry, not Fant, Cole Kmet. I spoiled the next guy I wanted to talk about.
That's fine. You could discuss Noah Fant too.
Yeah, no, Cole Kmet, he's interesting, but I do worry about inconsistency largely. And I guess, when you're streaming and shuffling tight ends, inconsistency is just something that you have to stomach week to week. But I think for every touchdown week, or every 2 touchdown week, he's going to have a 1 catch for 7 yards week. Now, granted, it's nice that he was used in the red zone, and maybe they go back to the well on that, and it's part of Justin Fields' improvement, and it's part of and it's just a guy that he starts to look to more, and they maybe call his number more a little bit there in the red zone here. But I do have some worries about inconsistency, whereas it's less so with Dulcich. Everyone will make the bid for Kmet after this huge week here, but I still think Dulcich is the better pickup here. And then,
I agree with you on that. Keep going.
And then I dropped Noah Fant here on the list. He's coming off basically his best game of the season, 5 catches on 6 targets for 96 yards. We'll see what's going on with the whole Seattle wide receivers and their injuries and everything. But Fant is someone that I've held on to in our dynasty league because of deep rosters and the fact that I just don't have a reliable tight end here. But, from week to week, he's someone that you can maybe plug and play and hope for 5-6 points, maybe a little bit more. So, Fant fits our threshold, but I would definitely rank him Dulcich first, and then Komet before Fant. And obviously, if Likely is, I wonder where would Likely fit into that mix for you if he were available? Because Mark Andrews is not known necessarily as an injury prone guy. He doesn't miss a lot of games. Where would Likely fit into that? Would you put it probably above Fant?
Given that he got just one catch in what should have been the biggest layup of his entire career, and they're on bye, I don't even know if I have him above Fant. I'm not. He's so inconsistent.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about the bye week. That'll do it. I mean, the one thing in his favor is that he did lead the team in targets, and it was in a game where the game script was Baltimore all the way. They just didn't have to throw. I think Lamar attempted 22 passes, and they ran 40 times. So with that kind of distribution, you're never going to see a lower. But so you're right. Yeah, Fant probably above Likely here, and we'll have to see how Andrews looks out of the bye. But I bet you next week. There's no rush to pick up Likely now. We'll wait and see on that situation. And then next week, his ownership will probably be down to like 10%. We can get him for next to nothing.
I want your 1 minute breakdown of defensive streamers, because obviously with the Patriots and Ravens out, people are probably going to be looking for them. But we have a ton of questions, and I want to make sure that they get the answers from Jake that they need. So give me your 1 minute breakdown on the defensive guys.
Right on. So obviously you don't want to see it after last night, but the Saints are 38% rostered. They head to Pittsburgh. I don't love them on the road, but defense, again, hasn't necessarily been the problem there. You could easily take the inverse of that with how Andy Dalton's playing. So they're a name I wanted to mention. I also wanted to mention the Raiders, 15% rostered. They're at home against the Colts and what'll probably be one of the lowest over-under games of the year. We'll see what Jeff Saturday cooks up for Indianapolis, but I don't expect that offense under Ellinger to suddenly turn that around until they go to Foles, which won't happen because they want to, that'll. It's a good obstacle for the Packers tanking, right? Because the Colts are going to be worse no matter what. Anyway, so now some actual ones. We've got Jerry's pick here, and one that I kind of agree with. Giants are 8% rostered. They're home against the Houston Texans and Davis Mills. And on top of that, they have the Lions next week. So there's possible a multi-week streamer there. Giants at 8% are probably the first bid that I'm putting in if I'm looking to stream. I'm also considering the Titans because they're at home. They held Mahomes in check last week, and they get the Broncos. Now Broncos are coming out of a bye. We'll see what they hook up. I'm not too confident about it. And then another candidate at 7% rostered is the Atlanta Falcons. I believe that was the Payne pick this week. They are at Carolina, so I don't necessarily love streaming bad defenses on the road. But given what we saw from PJ Walker last week, and given a short week, Thursday Night Football, with generally lower scoring, Falcons are on the radar as well. So chances are you don't have to get that deep. But those are some defenses to consider.
I love that Giants call. I hadn't even thought about them against the Texans, but at 8% rostered, they're widely available. That makes a great thing. Jerry's been fantastic at that all year long. I'm glad we use him as a resource. Okay, Jake, are you ready?
We did lose Xavier McKinney in some kind of off-road vehicle
RV accidents, right? Or sorry, whatever, riding around just typical things that you and I do every day while we're in Puerto Rico or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's where I go on the bye week.
Okay, so I have been talking about these as best I can while we're discussing it the rest of the show. I have confused Adam Weber and combined his questions into Jacob Glazer's one of those too. So we'll have to sort through all these because I've been inconsistent. We'll blame it on the sickness. So we'll start first with Brady Hill's question. I'll put it on the screen here for you. Should they trade Chris Godwin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Kyle Pitts for Olave and Hopkins?
It's tough without the rest of the roster, but I take the Olave and Hopkins side.
And I think I'd keep the Godwin and Amon-Ra, although I know Kyle Pitts has been inconsistent. So I promise it's not a Kyle Pitts
serviceable tight end to plug in. I think the upgrade, I think Amon-Ra to Hopkins is an upgrade, and I think Godwin to Olave is an upgrade. So if you can plug Pitts, someone in for Pitts, maybe grab Dulcich, I'd go for it.
Okay, that's fair enough. So this person, Adam, has been stashing running backs. They have Saquon, Khalil Herbert, Kareem Hunt, Rashad White, Elijah Mitchell. So really they have one starter. Khalil Herbert's been inconsistent. Alexander Madison, Pacheco. Should they drop one of them for Jeff Wilson instead?
I would drop Elijah Mitchell would be first. I mean, there are multiple. I think you could drop Pacheco for Wilson. You could drop Madison for Wilson if you wanted to, but I think Elijah Mitchell's top on the list. Yeah, he's designated to return from IR, but how many touches is he actually going to get with Christian McCaffrey in that backfield? Do you think he can carve out 5 touches a game? And
I do. I think
what's
that's what
his
Jeff
ceiling?
Wilson did before the trade.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, is that startable fantasy production with any type of ceiling? At least with Madison, you have a big ceiling if Cook were to go down, and with Pacheco, you have a there's a little bit of that unknown factor. You know, maybe he suddenly clicks one week and starts to break out, or maybe they're just saving him for the late season push. You know, so there's more upside with Madison and Pacheco than there is with Mitchell. I could see cutting all 3 of them for Jeff Wilson, but Mitchell's the first guy that I cut.
I think I'm going Pacheco if I'm answering that question. 18 snaps and then 20 snaps the past 2 weeks. They had the bye sandwiched in between. He's getting more playing time, but he's just the runner. And you have Jerick McKinnon doing dumb Jerick McKinnon things, and Edward Slayer's still around. That's where I have my bigger.
To me, it still means something that he's the starter, and I don't know what yet. But I'm taking a little bit of the unknown there.
Okay, all right. So Marco was really anxious about this one. Should he trade Devontae Adams and Travis Etienne for Diggs and Kamara? I think I know the answer to this, but I want your thoughts.
That's going to be a no for me, dog. I keep Devontae and Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, like unequivocally. I know Stephon Diggs is fine, but you have Devontae with his bye week over, Etienne still to come, but Kamara still has his as well. That's easily.
I mean, Kamara's not even the unquestioned bell cow with Ingram. Dwayne Washington got a bunch of carries last night.
Did he really? I didn't even.
Yeah, and now granted, that's smart to preserve Ingram or Kamara. I'm sorry for the long haul here, but I might be a little bit recency bias watching Kamara run into traffic a bunch of times last night and not really breaking out until they were down 20 points and still giving him handoffs. So yeah, Kamara's interesting. Diggs is fantastic, but Etienne, you might be able to make a case for top 5, top 3, number 1 back rest of the season.
Oh yeah,
and, Devontae Adams and I forget the other, and Diggs. Maybe Diggs tiny bit higher, but you never know that. They could easily be equal rest of the season, especially if there's any kind of Josh Allen thing going on. So stick to Devontae and Etienne in that trade for sure.
Couple more questions here, Jake, and if anyone else tries to straggle in, we're going to be ending the show soon here. So someone just traded Ramondre Stevenson, Allen Lazard, and Najee Harris for Kenneth Walker, Devonta Smith, and Tony Pollard. Which side gets the win on that one?
Now, this is tough because I always, even I'm sure you do this with Ask an Expert, but my rule of thumb is who gets the best player in the trade is the winner, regardless of whether that other stuff happens. The best player in this trade is Kenneth Walker. It's Kenneth Walker and Etienne. I mean, it's 1A and 1B in Dynasty, and both definitely top 5 backs rest of season, guys that you want. As much as I love Stevenson and as much as Lazard's still going to be around, Najee is basically a bench player at this point. Pollard, we saw what he can do. Pollard and Smith are borderline flex benches, but if your depth can support it after trading 2 of those running backs, I want the Kenneth Walker side. It's
funny. I looked at this and I thought, boy, that's a loss for the Kenneth Walker side. Like I thought they got a good deal out of Stevenson and Lazard. And the more I think about it, actually, it's just a genuinely fair trade. Mm-hmm. Yes, Stevenson is a step down for Kenneth Walker, but not dramatically. And I think you're pricing in the risk of Damian Harris coming back and really taking over more of that workload. Allen Lazard is a significant upgrade over Devonta Smith. And I know Smith has been good at times, but just good at times. And then Najee and Tony Pollard, they're both wild cards. Yeah. Inconsistent. One is outside of Pollard.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Jaylen Warren in the running back thing, but I believe they were just on bye this past week, so his ownership is down a little bit, and Warren has quietly been just as effective, if not more effective, than Najee Harris in the few weeks leading up to the bye. So, that's another stash candidate if you're looking.
There's been some really good questions, so I apologize, Jake, that I'm giving you so many, but this is another tough one. So they're offering Jerry Jeudy, Josh Palmer, and Deonta Foreman for Waddle. He has the person that has Waddle has Thielen, Sutton, and A.J. Dillon in the starting lineup, all obviously not great players. So he feels like it's an upgrade for that trade, or is that a lowball offer? My initial thoughts were, yeah, definitely lowball, but you look at who's starting in that equation, maybe it isn't too bad of a deal.
Yeah, maybe it's unique, but I tend to be averse to that guy in the league that takes like 3 players off their bench that they're not starting anyway and tries to offer me for like one pretty good player.
One your star, yep.
Yeah, I actually like Jeudy rest of season. Palmer,
and I like Foreman actually.
I'm okay with Judy rest of the season. He's established himself as the one guy over Sutton. Foreman, I don't know. I mean, obviously games like last week and that kind of game flow might not be the norm, or might it be? The Panthers could be the worst franchise in football right now. But Foreman will at least get a little competition for touches when Chuba Hubbard comes back, even if he is the number one. And who knows what happens with Josh Palmer? This could be his last 10 target game of the year if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are suddenly healthy at some point. Allen probably comes back before Williams. I don't actually know that. That would just be my guess. So
I would agree.
It feels like you're just offering your junk for someone that's a surefire starter. And Judy, I'm okay. And given the other guy's situation, I could see that to improve multiple starting spots. But it would be a little bit short-sighted giving up Waddle for that, I feel like, because, we could be a couple weeks away from Foreman and Palmer being barely above replacement level on waivers.
Yeah, I guess. I think Foreman has outplayed Chuba Hubbard in the fact that Hubbard can't get healthy. You got another game possibly with them playing Thursday where he'll establish himself as the dominant threat even more so. Although Blackshear, we didn't really discuss him at all, did have that late junk time touchdown for the Panthers when the game was completely out of hand. I don't think it's that. I don't think it's his offer. I guess I would say I would replace Palmer with some sexier eye candy, even if that player isn't fantastic. The Najee Harris and Kyle Pitts are the perfect examples for it. Somebody to that effect. 2 more questions, Jake, and then we're done here. So, thoughts on trading Debo and David Montgomery for David Adams?
Devontae Adams.
I agree. Well,
I heard you say David Adams. That was my answer to the question. Hang on a second. I have 0 Debo for some strange reasons here. I had to double check on his injury situation. I would be okay with that because I think the best player in that deal is Devontae Adams. And Montgomery, while the team and the offense is showing signs of life, I still think he's, again, it wasn't the case this week, but I still think that in most weeks, it'll only be like a 60-40 split between him and Herbert. So I'm okay adding Montgomery as a kicker there.
All right, and because you looked up Deebo Samuel, it's perfect. Rest of season, do you like Deebo Samuel more or Amari Cooper? We talked about Amari Cooper's really great playoff matchups in particular, but Deebo is obviously the better player, better offense. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is tough because if you'd asked me before the show, I'd have said Debo, obviously, no doubt.
Same here.
With what we uncovered about Amari Cooper, now it's starting to get very, very, very close here. We don't know what the situation is with Debo and his injury. Obviously, he's been banged up with a hamstring injury, missed the week before the bye. So, we'll see what happens here. And had a couple not super productive weeks and good matchups in the weeks leading up to the bye. So I'm going to be bold and say, give me Cooper, I guess. Alan Seslowski likes to say that injuries will find you. You don't need to find injuries. If you can unload a guy that has an injury tag right now for a guy like Cooper with that playoff schedule, rest of season, and everything going for him, I'd do it. And I could probably get roasted for this in a couple weeks, but I'm on the Cooper hype train right now after what we uncovered.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. All right. Well, that does it for us on the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you, of course, by No House Advantage. We'll be back again next week discussing some Week 11 waiver wire pickups. Of course, Jake, keep your head up, right? College basketball has just started, 200 games yesterday. I'm sure probably 700 more by the end of the week. But we want you well rested and ready to go for some more waiver wire recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll plug college basketball for just a quick second here. DFS gambling content every day on the site. Great tools, great analysis, most comprehensive injury report you'll see on the internet. Our team's doing a great job there. So if you have any interest in that, check it out. Yeah, 200 games last night. They decided, well, let's just take everyone and make everybody play. They're saving the Champions Classic with the Blue Bloods until next week. But we're setting single-day note records both yesterday and today in college basketball. More comprehensive coverage than ever before. Definitely check it out because that's what else I'm working on besides getting you guys the top waiver wire recommendations every week.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks all for the great questions too. And we'll be back again next week.